everyone to this very special episode of the Business Exchange How Business Works, brought to you by the American Business Council. My name is Margaret Olele, and I'm your host for this podcast. This is a very interesting one, actually, because it's the first time we are having the all, not just audio, but the visual. Um, Me in person, so you get to know who this host has been, and our special guest who is also the special guest of honor for our economic update, the second economic update in Bart this year, Professor Bart Nnaji. I know a lot of you would know Professor Bart Nnaji, but for those who don't know Professor Bart Nnaji, he has been a two-time, and that's not really what his CV is about, because I could go on and on. There's a two-time minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's and now I'm going to have to read my script because it's um, a bit a lot, but very interesting a lot. He's the founder. No, I will get to that later. He's a former William Kettler Whiteford Professor of Engineering. He is the founding director of the United States National Science Foundation Center for Redesign. He was also the former professor of mechanical and industrial engineering at the University of Massachusetts in the USA. He has served before he became a minister as a special advisor to the president of Nigeria 2010, 2011 on power. He has also served on the chairman of the presidential task force. And actually, for me, most excitingly, he is the founding director, he is the chairman and founder of the Geometric Power Limited. A lot of us, when we talk about, the hope we have regarding power, one name that just kind of keeps, or one state that keeps coming on the radar is all the fantastic things that are happening in Abia State and the great work that Geometric is doing. And so I'll start off by saying welcome to this very special show, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Margaret.
So really, we're looking at a lot of things. And like I said, we have talked about, the challenges just before we got in here. We talked about the challenges and we talked about the opportunities. And we've seen a lot of progress that's happened in Abia State in terms of, power generation and the positivity all around this. How has it been like, in a sense?
Well, in terms of getting to this point, it has been quite a journey, I must say. 20 years in the making. It took us 20 years, not because it is supposed to take 20 years. It is because of our country, a very dear country. So along the way, Nigeria met us, and the project got either delayed or stalled, because what we set out to do was to create a model on how power could be delivered sustainably, reliably to an area. In fact, it was an idea that I took into federal government when I became Minister of Power, that we should have clusters in Nigeria, different parts of Nigeria, where if you provide a generation system within a distribution area, that the power will be reliable. Because we tested it first in Abuja. We built a small power plant in Abuja, and it supplied power reliably for 2.5 years to the central area of Abuja in the year 2001 to 2004. So, but the fuel is always an issue. But as long as the fuel was available, we delivered reliable electricity, and it was a very fantastic thing. So we decided to do it in a much larger environment. So we went off to the president and requested for a territory. We said, don't give us sovereign guarantee, but give us the territory so that we take our fate in our own hands. We build power plant. We take the distribution infrastructure there, clean it up, and then we are able to supply and collect revenue from there directly. And so the president, being very, very smart in the world of uh, government and business, approved. That was President Obasanjo at the time. So he approved that we get a concession at the time. And we had condition that should there be privatization, we have a first right to purchase the area. So off we went to Aba, metropolis. We have 9 local governments out of Abia State's 17 local governments, 4,000 square kilometer area. Really the major industrial hub of that whole region. 3 million people in that area. So that's what we went and set out to build the power infrastructure. We got 2 licenses, one for generation, one for distribution, so that the generation power would supply to the disco. That it eventually became a disco in Nigeria, which is Aba Power. And we set out to find financing for it. Along the way, we met a number of issues. First, we started the project in 2004. By 2008, we met financial meltdown of the world, and everybody knows about that. So the people who had pledged money decided, oh, look, we're just not going to disburse. That was that. By the end of that, we restarted again and continued. Then in 2013, they privatized, and the government sold the area that had been concession to us without consideration, without carving it out, sold to another company. And we had to go through legal process, courts, and we won. They refused to move. It was the next government that mediated, and we had to restart the whole thing again. So when I say a long journey, it's a really long journey because the project from 2013 to when we got restructuring of the financing was about 9 years. And we are happy in the final analysis that we were successful in developing it. A model whereby power generation is domiciled locally. It's not a national grid power. So the power ensures the power distribution ensures reliability, getting power directly locally. The distribution network is much more improved, because the whole thing about privatization that we did in Nigeria was, okay, let's see how we can improve the distribution infrastructure. Let's not go to the bidding of how much is the area worth, how much is the network worth, but let us ask, how can you reduce the average technical collection and commercial losses? But it has meaning. It has meaning of a lot of investment. And that was that. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. As you were speaking, I thought of a lot of things. You said, 20 years long journey. One of the challenges I've noticed, and I'm one person who really doesn't like talk about challenges. I'm more of the half full type of person. But the issue around power and energy in Nigeria remains what I call a Janus-faced conversation. At one point, you'd say, okay, yes, we are the largest producer, for instance, of oil. We have a lot of gas, there's some incredible untapped opportunity. We have, the potential to go into the solar piece and all that. But even what we have not even used. But investors still remain super wary in a sense. US companies are coming on board, but it's still you still have some of those challenges, and part of it is the fact that one government comes, another government goes, and the issue of sanctity of contract becomes a major critical concern. Beyond that, obviously that ties to some level of governance. There are other things around transparency and accountability that we're looking at. This, I mean, we're not trying to use those words just to use them, but these things are real. And we experience them every day with companies that would say, "Oh yeah, they want to come in." You can imagine that, when you shared your conversation, at the update, you mentioned three countries, that came in to sign up Nigeria
Yes.
to generate power.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, it became Bahut.
Yes.
How do we? What are your suggestions? I mean, this is free to the government, but how do we help improve issues around accountability, transparency, governance, sanctity of contracts? I mean, I know it's all very
they're kind of bundled together.
Absolutely. How do we move forward on this?
Thank you. Well, you really touched on a number of critical issues that are critical to ensure that investors feel comfort in coming to invest in a country like ours. Sanctity of contract. We experienced it firsthand, breached the contract, impunity. They did not care at all. Our lawyers wrote when the privatization was going on, look, here is the clause, it's clause 10 in our agreement, that should there be privatization, we have a first right to purchase. They didn't care. We simply sold the asset to another company. So when you have that, which was the actual security, we did not ask for sovereign guarantee. That was really the guarantee for the investment. So you take it away, then the whole thing collapses. Sanctity of contract. People not for a country to have that level of impunity. I was sure I was coming from America to come to do this, and I felt there's just no way a country will breach an agreement that it signed at the highest level. But they did. So the country, if we want to move forward, must never breach agreements. Okay, that's one. The other is we developed this partial risk guarantee as a way forward. And obviously, the person I worked with, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy at the time, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a first-class economist in the world. As former managing director of the World Bank, she knows how to do this. And the World Bank was backing us. Even Afrexim, European Investment, all these banks wanted to come in and participate in the partial risk guarantee. By now, Nigeria would have been very far advanced in providing. But what happened? Well, as soon as the new government came in 2015, partial risk guarantee stopped. No more. In fact, we have not had power purchase agreement signed from that time for major power till now. It has not been. Many companies invested millions of dollars, and I mean millions of dollars, to develop power projects based on the arrangement which provided security for the investment and which was less taxing on the balance sheet of the federal government, because the federal government was not supposed to be providing sovereign guarantee. But for the World Bank to agree to support partial risk guarantee, the government has to perform, has to be provide an environment that's attractive for investors, and to ensure that the people who are providing the power and who are taking the power would be performing. And the environment had not been provided. So, like, that's why a whole lot of talk about cost reflective tariff and so on. So there are a whole lot of issues that must be in place for us to be talking about this. Government has a key role to play in ensuring that the environment is secure, that the environment is incentivized, that there is no breaching of contracts for us to be able to do this. I listened to one of the speakers talk about that what Nigeria needs when it gets broken down about the requirement for infrastructure is about $10 billion. $10 billion can only produce 10,000 megawatts.
No wonder I noticed someone was shaking her head.
No. It's nothing. It's nothing. Nigeria needs a whole lot more than. In fact, that's what Nigeria needs in a year. Okay, a year. 10,000. You need about 10,000 megawatts so that you have for power generation and for transmission and the various areas. You need a minimum of that per year. Where do we get that? Well, we have to be determined that we want to do this. Seriousness, which means get the environment to be attractive so that people will come here and perform. Let it not be a gaming environment. Let it not be a place where you have people asking you for all manner of things. If you want a piece of paper, you must pay somebody. Anything you want, you must pay. There is no determination about the country. That's why when I was speaking today, I said, can the people in power say, here is my altruistic gift to my people.
Yeah, I like that.
Yes. Yeah. Don't, so that you remove your hand from wanting something in your pocket from this. This is very critical. If we can do that, we'll be able to move forward because then we'll begin to think about the nation rather than self.
Talking about the altruistic gift to your people, I begin to wonder if the past government, the government that of the immediate past government before President Tinubu gave an altruistic gift by the Electricity Act of 2023. I don't know if that was meant to be that, because it opened up opportunities for subnational governments to take their fate in their hands, and if we look at the reality of what's going on right now, we see the fact that people are generating power, using obviously generators mostly, especially in the rural areas, and you find out that this is not sustainable. It's even getting worse now because the price of fuel and all that has gone up, and diesel is another story. Um, so how do you think subnational governments can tap into this to actually um, not just make lives in the rural communities more livable? Because when I even say rural, I'm thinking of us in Lagos here, and I'm saying, look, there are some, you're in band one or band two or band three as the new story begins. But it gets worse as you move it. How are subnational governments encouraged to take this, work with examples, for instance, of what is happening in Abia to see what can be done?
Well, you, if somebody, if you're looking at it from a distance, you may see the act as a gift, altruistic gift. But another person could look at it like shifting the problem.
Absolutely.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That's why I say that everything about Nigeria seems to be Janu's face.
Yes,
You look
because
at this year and then you see another thing.
so people want, the people are saying, oh, if you could only allow the states to take over. There was never, in fact, I mentioned earlier, there was never a place where it says states couldn't generate electricity. I gave the example of Rivers State and Akwa Ibom State. They built power plants more than 10 years ago, maybe more than 15 years ago. They built power plants. Okay? So there was never a problem with states building power plants. It's just capacity to build, capacity to operate. So financial capacity, technical capacity, these are the issues. It's always financial and technical. Now, was there a problem with them owning discos? Well, they still don't own discos, okay, because the discos are owned by companies, private companies. They can collaborate with these private companies to make the private companies perform better within their areas of operation domain. So that is possible. That is always possible. There's nobody that's stopping them. The only difference is regulation. Now you have states regulating, and you also have national regulation. People have no idea the level of knowledge, training, infrastructure required in the regulatory commission to regulate. How are you going to find states, 36 states plus federal capital territory, doing regulation? Well, here we are. Yeah? So, because I was saying people just rush off and try to do this thing. My advice, states need to collaborate with the private sector operators within their various environments in terms of generation, because I don't know how many states that can afford to build power plants required to support them. Like in this Lagos state now, Lagos gets a good chunk of the power in the nation, close to 1,000 megawatts, right? So, but it needs more than that. It's way more than that. Let's say that it needs 2,000 megawatts. It means that Lagos State must have $1 billion to invest just in generation alone. Just in generation. So you can imagine how it is. The Lagos State is a very economically vibrant state. Mm-hmm. There are states that would find it very, very difficult to talk about investing in power generation and then power distribution. The network is another one. So the network is owned by these companies. So the wires are actually owned by the private companies. Well, federal government is part of it. They can also buy the share of federal government, which is 40% in the discos, in most of the discos. If they buy the 40%, then they become shareholder, part of the discos. But some states even have aspiration to absolutely take over. That is like reverse the whole privatization. So when you're talking about flip-flop, this is the absolute headquarters of the whole thing.
It's just very interesting. But just like when we're talking about Lagos and consumption of 8,000 megawatts, and some states are probably may not only doing up to one. I think I recall.
No, the whole power availability in Nigeria. Remember, no, it's not 12. It's about 4,000 megawatts. Okay. That is on grid. Yes, now. Because
but where do they go down to the 12,000?
No, the 13,000 is installed capacity.
Oh, installed.
No, installed, but not available. No. The restriction is by the transmission and the gas. Okay. So you're getting, suddenly, just let's say less than 5,000 megawatts. Lagos State takes about 1,000 of that.
Okay.
The rest of the 11 disco, the remaining 9 discos, because we in Aba, we generate our own power. Then 11 discos, Lagos State has 2 discos. So if they take 1,000, then you have like 3,000 megawatts for the rest of 9 states. So when you share it, you will see that some states get less than 300 megawatts of power.
Yeah.
Not states, sorry, discos.
Discos.
And some of these discos span 4 or 5 states.
Yeah.
So the what a state gets is far less
than what is needed.
yeah, very far less.
Perhaps that is where alternative power like solar
Yeah,
comes in
sure.
communities,
Yes.
especially in the rural areas. Because I'm thinking if we're not able to get enough, then perhaps these interventions are, critical, to move forward.
Sure.
But while you were speaking, something came to my mind, and that's the issue of infrastructure. And I've been in different rooms at the LDS and all, where we're talking about generation and transmission and distribution, to say that the major headache is that we have very obsolete, not adequate, and I think you also give some voice into that, of infrastructure around the transmission and the distribution area. Is that challenge and opportunity? Can investors really look at that as a place where they can? I mean, looking at assuming that we have a government that ensures sanctity of contracts, respects, the rule of the game, governance. Is there an opportunity in this area based on your experience and what you have known globally?
I can tell you for sure. There are opportunities in generation, and there are definitely opportunities in transmission, that is the evacuation. Matter of fact, when I was minister, we set about trying to encourage private sector participation in transmission, because what you need to have is to say, let's say the super grid I was talking about, you break the super grid into a number of lots, and people should bid for it, and private sector should invest. You can do a build, own and transfer, or even a build or a concession. There are several methods to do this. Definitely an opportunity exists there, because there's always a willing charge. The power that you transmit, you pay a fee for that transmission. Yes.
That's again, as you were talking, I was just thinking, okay, I need to know a bit more about what's happening in Abia. It's there. Well, I don't want to take it offline, so we can still talk. What's the ultimate plan is to power the whole state. Where are you at currently?
Okay, well, we are powering 9 of the 17 local governments. Okay, but that was how the arrangement was made in the first place. But the government of Abia State is trying to acquire the rest of the local governments from those who own the disco. Because the Enugu disco covers 5 states of Southeast, including Abia, except for the area where we operate. So we are a disco unto ourselves. And the balance, the government of Abia wants to acquire and try to transform in the same way as we have done for the Aba disco area. So for us, that's really the objective. Improve. The government wants to be part of that improvement.
You talked about Akwa Ibom and Rivers having a gas plant,
Gas-fired power plants.
yeah. And sometimes people are thinking, some states may think, oh, we want to set this up, just like you find out that almost every state will want to have an airport. Um, but I'm thinking, is there a possibility for neighboring states to kind of band together, to to see what they can do. Because if we don't start this conversation, everybody wants to be a big fish in a small pond. But perhaps those kinds of conversations should. But do you think it's a viable? I mean, it's a different thing in terms of engaging and accepting, and people thinking my Mercedes or whatever the car is now is bigger than yours. But is it something that can work? better.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, the success of the whole Power Reform Act of 2023 is based on what you just said: collaboration. States collaborating with each other and collaborating with private sector. But a lot of the state governments, they think we have capacity, we have all the wherewithal, so they go about it. They don't think about actually what's involved. So yes, when states join together, that's what, actually I'm very pleased to have seen what the Western states, the meeting they had last day or so, where all the governors, the 6 governors, joined together to want to do a number of things collaboratively. That's the way to go.
Absolutely.
Because it's a recognition that individual states can't do these things. Think of even the transmission you're talking about. To say you want to do 132 kV network as a state, you won't be able to do it. I mean, it's very expensive. But as a region, yes. And jointly, you can build power plants. But each state wants to build power plants. Yeah, they want to build power plant. They think it is just that straightforward thing. And they don't even want to look for people who know how to do it. They believe, this thing when I said ring fence power. Think of it as your artistic gift. It carries a lot of message in what I was saying. Do not think of how you gain from what you're trying to do personally. Yeah? Because that's what a lot of people in the government begin to think about. Okay, so, but if they can get away from that, then the collaboration can happen. It becomes possible for them to be less imperial and think of more of collaboration, some humility in being able to subordinate yourself to the power of the whole. Very, very, very critical for us to move forward.
Yeah, I really like that humility to subordinate to the power of a whole. It is very important. Um, well, an area that's out of the script is this issue of energy security.
Yeah.
We've been talking about moving away from fossil fuel. We've had all the companies, and there seems to be even a pledging by Nigeria to move in that direction. We know the realities of climate change, and we're faced with that reality and our reality in terms of the revenues we generate, and overall the need that we have in terms of economic growth and livelihood and existence. In West Africa, we're seeing a couple of our countries like Senegal, but are just kind of late takers in this whole business. Kenya, in East Africa. And I was at one of those meetings where African countries were like, look, are we going to actually throw all this away? And how is that going to work for us? So there is the reality of the world, the climate act, um, the um, the reality of having a clean um, and very healthy world against the reality of energy security. Can you kind of give us an advice on what the balance should be?
Yes, the energy security. My fundamental is that Nigeria should not join the boat of climate change initiatives, particularly in fossil fuel, in the way other countries have, the Western countries have seen it, because it is clear that they simply abandoned those initiatives as soon as the Ukraine war came. Okay, so they simply went back to even coal fired power plants. I believe that Nigeria has that has natural gas, that natural gas is a transition fuel. We should not really allow ourselves to be cowed into classifying natural gas as fossil fuel in the way that other people see it, because all those other countries are using natural gas. In fact, the whole reason why there was a problem in Germany during the Ukraine war is because natural gas was no longer coming from Russia. So why should we allow ourselves to think of natural gas as fossil fuel that should be stopped? Okay, it is less hazardous to the environment. In fact, I would say if America, China, India, all those companies had used natural gas to develop their economy, we wouldn't be talking about this issue now. I am 100% sure of that.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Prof. I really could go on and on, but I recognize that we're getting very close and we have spent a lot of time talking. And so I'd like to thank you so much for giving us and sparing your time to be a guest on this podcast. And I would say to our listening audience, thank you, and the guests who are viewing, and our audience who are watching. Thank you so much for joining us today. And follow us on all our social media platforms. And yeah, see you next time.